For developing my images, especially when I prepare images for retouch, as you can see, I don't use many panels simply because I don't need them. So I always use basic panel because I need to check the lights, I need to check the white balance and a few other things. So this is always must do. Then I often like to adjust the colors using color mixer. I check optics, and optional, I work with the calibration. But we have much more panels, so in this video I'm going to tell you a little bit more about other panels in case you need to do some work with some other images. First panel that I actually skipped is tone curve, and this is really powerful, but I don't really find this useful for developing images, especially if we need to do a future work in Photoshop. So once you open the curve adjustment layer, you will see this square, and inside this square we have some shadow. And this shadow, as you can see, is exactly the same thing that we have on the top. And this is the histogram, so it tells us how the pixels on the image are distributed. And when you look at this, most of the pixels are on the left side. So that's how it is. On the bottom here, we have the shadows. On the top here, we have the highlights. If the distribution of pixels look like this, it means on most of the images, we have most of our pixels distributed in the shadow area. And that's the fact. As you can see, this image is rather dark, so most of the pixels on this image is dark, and we don't have many of the pixels that are bright. That's the first thing. Also, we have two types of curve adjustment layer. The one that we have here now is parametric curve, and the other is point curve. So start with parametric. This is probably better to understand for beginners because we have the sliders on the bottom, and with these sliders we can adjust shadows, highlights, lights, and darks. And these are these blocks here. So as you can see, we have the first block. This will be our shadows. The second one will be darks, third one lights, and the highlights. We can grab these blocks and adjust by ourselves the range of each part. So for example, if I'm going to move the shadows up, I will increase the light on the shadows. If I do it with highlights, I can increase the highlights or pull them down. So this is really simple way of working here. And really great help to understand the curves is the fact that with this recent adjustment we can see in the histogram, when you look on the top here, this histogram is a little bit brighter, and when you look down here it's a little bit darker. So we can understand that when we go up the image will become brighter, when we go down the image will be darker. A little bit more precise curve will be the point curve, which is the second one. And once again, here we have connected RGB channels, and here inside is representation of the lights. How are they distributed through our image? What we can do with point curve, we can create the points on that. So once we create the points, we can work really precisely, for example, darkening the shadows, increasing highlights, or anything else. Because the fact is, we can create as many points as we want, and we can manipulate with them any way we want. So for example, if I would like to add the light to the dark pixels, what I would do, grab this and go up. And as you can see, the dark pixels getting filled with the light. And now I cannot get darker than this level. That's why this image become so bright. So let's go back to 0. And this is how the point curve work. And we can also distinguish 3 different channels. Luckily we have colors here, red, green, and blue. And also with the help inside we have these 2 different lights. So we can see on the top we have red, on the bottom we have cyan. What is happening here? If we're going to increase the curve, we are going to increase the red light. If we will go down, we decrease the red light, and this is why the image will be getting a little bit darker, and also it will be without these red pixels, so the image will be getting in the cyan color. If we grab here, we will be increasing the red light in the dark pixels, and of course on the other side this is opposite. And the same rule will be for every other channel here for green and for the blue. You would ask, why I did not adjust the lights using curve? So the reason is simple. As I don't really need to do any complicated things, I prefer to do it in the basic panel. I have simple slider, contrast, highlights, shadows, and I need to be very basic doing this. So if I manipulate with contrast, I precisely want to just flatten the image generally. So I don't need such a complicated tool and such advanced tool as curves. So closing the curves, let's move further. We have the detail here, and we have tools like sharpening, noise reduction, and on the bottom, color noise reduction. So when it comes to sharpening, you might have brief idea because I talk about this. We don't want to change the texture of the image. We don't want to make this more sharpened or anything like this. And these cosmetic things is something we would do at the end. So simply, and this is not time for sharpening. When it comes to noise reduction, of course, this is useful. If we have dark image and we increase exposure, we might get the noise. So we need to add some noise reduction. That would help when the image has this problem, when it has color noise sometimes appearing in the close. Also, we can adjust this with the sliders, but in this case, no use of that. Split toning, it's basic when it comes to the colors, but also not useful when it comes into developing image and preparing this for retouching, because we don't want to add some artificial colors. And this is what split toning is doing. We can add some color for the highlights, and the same we can choose the hue for the shadows. And then by increasing saturation, we can add this color. But as you can see, it changes the image too much. It adds these artificial colors, while before we were working with natural colors that exist here. But now we changing all of this. And also with this balance slider, you can change the balance between the shadows and highlights. So this is the reason why this tool is also not too useful. Then when it comes to geometry, this is actually useful, not for the specific image that we work now, but when we need to flip the image a little bit more, if we need to make the image straight, that would be useful. We can start with auto adjustment, or we can choose manual transformations. And then as you can see, we can adjust the perspective of the image, change the scale of the image. So for certain tasks, this could be useful. But for this specific image, I didn't need to use this. And then we have effects, and similar situation as before, we have grain and vignetting. And when it comes to vignetting, it wouldn't look professional. So vignetting is not even something I do in professional portrait retouching, but we have grain, and we have some more sliders here, choosing size of the grain and roughness. As I am a huge fan of the grain, this cosmetic adjustment, once again, we do at the very end, because if I would need a grain at this stage, let's zoom in and let's add some grain. As you can see, if I do it, I cannot see the face imperfection. It would be really difficult to retouch the image. So as grain is useful, this is not the right time for doing this. So this is about the panels that we did not use. And the other thing with Camera, we have some of the tools, and I don't really use the tools in Camera because the tools are more powerful in Photoshop, but we have a few of them. So the first one on the top is the edit. So it will show us our general panels that we have here. After that, we have crop tool. So crop is really useful because as you can see, we have some horizontal images here, and we will have to do some crop at the very end. And I already said this, I prefer to crop the image at the very end. Some people I know, they do the crop at the beginning, but I think there is no reason. So it's good to give yourself some time to think about the crop. And once we are here, as you can see, we can choose the angle, we can rotate the image, we can choose the ratio of the image. So for these images, probably the ratio would be different, something better for portraits, something like this. But as I said, I don't really see the reason that I would crop the image at this stage. When it comes to some other tools, of course, we have a tool like spot removal, which will be healing brush, and that will be also clone stamp, but this tool's more powerful in Photoshop, and I never recommend doing this at this stage unless you don't plan to do really deep retouching, some really small things like removing object from the background, removing few pimples. That would be absolutely fine. The other tools, we will have adjustment brush if we want to just add some adjustment in certain area. We have some filters, once again, if we want to add some filtered adjustments here, so different shape of the filter here, radial filter, red eye removal, and few other. We have also snapshots and presets. So before these two were as the panels, and finally they were removed because they don't serve a really useful purpose in adjusting the image. Snapshots allows you to take the sample of the image. So for example, when I open this, I want to save some snapshot here. I will choose this. I can save this as image 1. Then let's go back to edit. Let's say I want to change something here and I want to compare. So I can create image 2 and I will have, as you can see, 2 different snapshots. So it could serve the purpose of maybe comparing the image, but this is not something that would be useful. And similar to presets, presets are simply filters that we can apply. And also some other settings when we want to reset the adjustments that we did, if we want to export some preset, load setting or save setting and load this to other images. Below, a little bit less useful tools, hand tool that allow us to move the image when we zoom in, and the color sampler here, which is now called toggle sampler overlay. On the bottom, we have opening tools, and when it comes to saving and opening, let's move to the next lesson where we are going to talk about this.